Welcome, football fans, to another edition of IDP Plus Bets. That is right, folks. We are just continuing on with our NFL Futures Player Prop Edition, where we are going through each NFL division and giving out my 4 best player prop bets for the entire season. And we're heading over to the AFC. We've done the NFC, and now we're heading over to the conference that it actually has Super Bowl winners, the ones with the Lombardi Trophy on their side. And we're kicking off this AFC conference with none other than the AFC East. That is right, folks. This is a pretty interesting division with 3 real title contenders and then one team that is vying for the worst team in the league and maybe not even close. Speaking of those abysmal New England Patriots, look, they don't even know who they want at quarterback. They don't even know who's going to be on offense. They don't know what they want in New England. And it's probably not going to be any good. The market is already so low on them, and it's really hard to get high on any of those guys. So we're going to have 4 bets coming from the other 3 teams that are actually going to be a little bit enjoyable to watch. So for our wallets and for our quality of life, we're going to have our 4 bets coming from the 3 other teams. We're going to kick this one off going to snowy Buffalo. We are going to be talking about their rookie wide receiver in Keon Coleman. And unfortunately for him, we are going to be fading Keon Coleman. Give me his under 675.5 receiving yards at minus 110. So this fade is kind of multi-layered. Comes at some different angles here. First one is the scheme change. You know, the Bills really kind of have a change in the guard. Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis have been their guys since 2020. And they're gone now. They got rid of both of them at the end of the season. They let them walk, traded, whatever it was. And this is a situation where, that was a huge part of their offense. When you think of the Buffalo Bills, you think of Josh Allen, gunning it down the field to either Davis or Stephon Diggs. That's mostly what they looked like. Allen using his legs and not really having a strong running game, right? Well, when offensive coordinator Joe Brady took over about the midway point in last season, there was this shift in kind of offensive play calling, offensive mentality, a lot more of a balanced look, a lot more of 2 tight end sets, using some of their strengths in both Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, and really relying on James Cook to kind of be the guy out of the backfield. So I kind of expect this to continue where we're seeing a lot less of, deep shots downfield and this kind of gunslinging offense, throwing it 40 plus times a game. And I expect a little bit more of a balanced attempt. So one, I do think there's going to be less targets to go around. I also do expect Dalton Kincaid to kind of take that step forward and be that number 1 receiving threat that I think he's capable of being. A young dynamic player at the tight end position. And now we have this wide receiver room where, they brought some guys in Curtis Samuel, MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They brought in some guys who are decent, maybe above average. And I think that Keon Coleman kind of comes into this room and just kind of fits in as like one of the guys. I don't really see this as a situation where someone steps up and becomes kind of the alpha dog of that wide receiver room, or even that 2 guys kind of separate themselves. And if it is so, my bet's more on Curtis Samuel, Dalton Kincaid to kind of be the lead guys as opposed to Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman's a prospect who makes really good catches in traffic, but he does struggle to get separation. So he does make some really nice plays, tightly contested catches, but he just really struggles to get that separation. He's not the fastest guy, not the cleanest route runner, and he didn't even get this many yards at his last season at FSU. His big season where he put up 11 touchdowns, he went under this 675.5 receiving yard mark. So it's hard for me to expect him to just come into the NFL and just really start taking over. He's someone who definitely shot up everyone's draft boards because he's a likable guy and everyone was rooting for him. And there's no reason, as a person, he might be a great person, but I just don't see it translating to the next level, at least not right away. He might have a decent season, somewhere around 500 receiving yards, but I just don't see him getting to that 700 mark and really kind of being a above average receiver in the NFL right now. So give me Keon Coleman under 675.5 receiving yards at minus 110. All right. Heading over from snowy Buffalo to sunny Miami. That is right, folks. We are heading down to Miami, and we are heading there to running back Raheem Mostert. Listen, if you're going to come in here and, give me the fantasy football take and kind of be the Devon Achane truther and think that he's going to get 400 carries and, Mostert is just going to get left in the dust. Get out of here. That is just simply not true. I think sometimes we see a prospect, and look, Devon Achane is absolutely more explosive, more electric than Raheem Mostert. But Raheem Mostert fits perfectly into this Miami offense as a consistent running back, a guy who has been proven the past 2 years in the system to do well. I mean, he went over this number in the 2 seasons he's been in Miami. Mike McDaniel trusts him. He gave him over 200 carries last year, and he rewarded him with over 1,000 yards, just under 5 yards a carry, and 18 rushing touchdowns. He had 21 total touchdowns last season. Raheem Mostert is not going anywhere. And now I know there's going to be this argument about his age as he's going into his 10th season as a running back, but he's not your typical 10th year guy in the league. This is someone who didn't get a lot of burn his first 7 seasons in the NFL. In fact, in his first 7 seasons, he had less than 300 combined carries in his first 7 seasons. I mean, there's guys getting more than 300 touches in a season, a la Derrick Henry, a la Christian McCaffrey, right? So when we talk about like a wear and tear on the body standpoint, this isn't your typical 10th year guy who's been kind of through the grinder. It's really been these last 2-3 years that he's kind of upped that volume. And he's shown that he can stay healthy and have the ability to produce in this Miami offense. I think this Miami offense is exposed enough to handle 2 running backs. I mean, I really think both these guys go over this number, but I like Raheem Mostert as a guy who everyone's forgetting about because he is kind of that safe bet. And I'm not asking for him to do a whole lot. To get 700 yards as a guy who I think is Miami's running back number 1, I think Achane is definitely going to get his touches. I think he's going to get some work out of the backfield. But I do think Raheem Mostert, when it boils down to it, is this team's number 1 running back. And I think this is entirely too low of a number for a good offense's running back number 1. So I am a Raheem Mostert truther. So I'm going to be taking him. Give me him over 675.5 rushing yards at -115. All right, folks, halfway through the episode, we got 2 out of 4 bets. And you know what that means. Time to pay some bills. Let me tell you about my friends over at Trophy Smack. And that is right, folks. Hey, less than 3 weeks away from NFL kickoff. It's a great time to find value in the betting markets, get excited for football. College football is right here. It's also a great time for fantasy football. That is right. It is draft season. And in order to get into the game right now, head on over to Trophy Smack. They've got all the gorgeous draft boards that you can need, complete with all these player stickers that so much that you couldn't possibly use them all. And for the first time, they're reaching out to the defensive nerds like you and me, and they have an IDP expansion pack. So they got everything you could possibly need. Going to drop that description link down in the show notes. So check that out and get your Trophy Smack trophy and draft board today. All right, folks, let's get back to it. And we are going to wrap up here with 2 New York Jets bets here. Always a little bit of a scary proposition to be in, especially if they're both going to be kind of pro-Jet takes. So the New York Football Jets, they made a big signing here in the offseason. Their big splash on the offense was going out and getting big play wide receiver Mike Williams from the Los Angeles Chargers. The New York Jets on paper are a really solid team. They were a really solid team on paper last year, and injuries kind of made that season get a bit derailed. Now, this is a kind of a peculiar situation I find myself in because the Jets have their injury troubles, and you have a guy who's dealing with some injury trouble, a guy who's coming off a major injury in an ACL. But I do think that this is one of those unique situations where I am kind of in on a guy despite him coming off a major injury like an ACL. So talking about the injury here, he injured himself. It was September 24th. Mike Williams tore his ACL, anterior cruciate ligament, major stabilizing ligament in your knee. Requires season-ending surgery, typically about a 10 to 12-month recovery timeline. The nice part here is Mike Williams, because he injured himself so early in the season, he's working with 11 and a half months of recovery time until week 1. That is kind of prime time, almost a year later, he's getting for recovery time. So that is a plus. The other thing is, I just think he's a great fit. So I'm going after Mike Williams over 4.5 receiving touchdowns. I'm specifically going after the touchdown market here. Mike Williams is a big guy. I mean, he's 6'4", 218 pounds. He's a big body, a big target that he can especially be used in the red zone. Aaron Rodgers, likes those big targets to use those guys in the red zone. You have Garrett Wilson and you have Breece Hall, two electric young players who are going to take the eyes of the defense with them. And I think this allows for Mike Williams to get some one-on-one coverage with the team's second best corner or with the safety and being able to get more than 4 touchdowns. I think he easily hits this number over 5. As far as, the ramp up for him going into the season, they said they're going to handle the situation, they as in the New York Jets, are going to handle the situation similar to Breece Hall last year, where Breece Hall was kind of on a snap count for the first 4 games, and then they let him loose. So I think, he's going to be active. He's going to be playing each week. And I think from week 5 on, he's going to be, again, getting as many snaps as his body can handle. And I really like that situation. So give me Mike Williams over 4.5 receiving touchdowns at plus 115. Getting a little bit of plus money there. All right, folks, the last bet for the AFC East. I just talked about him. We're talking about our guy, Mr. Breece Hall. This is a guy who had a very, very, very solid year in year 1 off his ACL tear, and now he's heading into year 2. Give me Breece Hall to have 1,000 rushing and 500 receiving yards at plus 275. Now, I know what you're thinking. 1,000 rushing and 500 receiving, that sounds like a lot. Look, Breece Hall was simply 6 yards away from hitting this last season. And let's look at last season. He was coming off an ACL tear where there can be a production chip at times. Breece Hall has been quoted to say that he finally feels healthy off his ACL tear. And the research can show that. Research shows that it can take up to 2 years for normal movement to return, like pre-injury movement to return. So all that cutting and, all the stopping on a dime, acceleration, deceleration, that is so important to the running back position. He now finally feels healthy. What a scary, scary thought for the rest of the league and especially the AFC East, that Breece Hall was able to have a really solid, great year, and he didn't even feel healthy last year. So I expect him from a health standpoint to be in a better spot. Also, he's in a better situation. The Jets went out and they made a lot of changes to the offensive line. That should be an improved unit. And, not only was he playing behind a bad offensive line, but he was probably playing with arguably the worst quarterback play in the entire league last season. Whether it was, Mike White or Zach Wilson or whoever, Tim Boyle. It was a brutal, brutal situation in New York. And now you have Aaron Rodgers coming in, and then you're looking. I'm not even saying that Aaron Rodgers is going to come in and be like the Hall of Fame, all-pro guy. He's just going to provide some competent quarterback play where teams aren't going to be able to stack the box and, crazy key in on Breece Hall. You've got Garrett Wilson. You bring in a guy like Mike Williams. So I really like Breece Hall this year. I mean, I think this is a guy who has the potential, we talked about fantasy a little bit, but to be the number 1 fantasy player overall, the RB1 this year, he's just so dynamic. And then out of the backfield as a receiving threat, he hit over this 500 mark last season. I think he's going to get there both on the ground and through the air. I cannot get enough Breece Hall this year. Again, I will reiterate, he didn't even think he was healthy last season, and he had an amazing year. So I can't wait to see what Breece Hall is going to do. So give me him to have over 1,000 rushing yards and over 500 receiving yards at plus 275. All right, folks, I'm going to do a quick wrap up as I always do, and then I'm going to get on out of here. So we went with my top 4 bets for the AFC East player prop edition. Bills wide receiver Keon Coleman under 675.5 receiving yards at minus 110. Dolphins RB1 Raheem Mostert over 675.5 rushing yards at minus 110. Jets wide receiver Mike Williams over 4.5 receiving touchdowns at plus 115. And Breece Hall, Jets running back, to have 1,000 plus rush yards and 500 plus receiving yards at plus 275. All right, folks, those are the 4 bets that I am going to be on for this season. I hope you check out. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe. As you can see, IDP Plus Bets is a bit of a new channel. We're looking for feedback as we go into our first season, kind of branching a little bit off of the IDP brand, getting into more, obviously, the sports betting world. So give us your feedback. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Again, I wrapped up the NFC edition of all of these. So the NFC South, North, East, and West are all done. Make sure you check that out. And other than that, folks, less than 3 weeks away from NFL kickoff. We got college football coming back just this weekend. So I hope that, you were nice to your spouse, your partner, your wife, your man, whatever it may be, because you need to build some brownie points up, because we now have meaningful football from now until February. I hope that gets you as jacked up as I am. The doc is out of here.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.